Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hey, we are back again with the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 140, and I am your humble servant, your Trek Lord of West Michigan, Charlie Carden. I am joined, as always, by my faithful companion, my number one in the podcast world, that is, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, good afternoon.
Hello.
And we have a new friend with us today. It's been a while since we've had a chance to roll out somebody brand new. This is Tawnya Lee. We've met on social media, on Threads and Blue Sky, and she is a Trekker. She is also an author, and you're an educator, if I remember correctly. Reading about your details.
Yeah,
excellent. Well, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you. Tell us a little bit about how you became a Star Trek fan.
Well, my original love for sci-fi in general came from The Empire Strikes Back because I was a 4-year-old little girl.
I was 4 years old.
I went to the theater. Yes, I was 4, and I went to the theater, and I loved it. I was like, This is amazing. In fact, the only doll I still have from my childhood is my Princess Leia doll.
Oh my gosh!
And that just automatically flowed into I've got to have more of this. So that, Star Trek watching, I think I started with the movies.
Okay. Yeah. Very similar for me.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah. Started with, I remember seeing TOS in the early 80s on TV 50 in Detroit, which is my hometown. But just very vaguely. And then, it was, I think I saw Star Trek 2 and 3 in passing with my uncle, but it was Star Trek 4 we went, and that was kind of the beginning of everything.
Right. So, and I think also watching The Next Generation.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Because those two things followed just a year apart. Well, awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. And for anybody listening, we are always looking to have interested parties join us for a guest spot. If you like what we do here and you'd like to talk about Star Trek, hit us up. We'll give all of our social tags at the end of the show. We're pretty easy to find. But we're going to launch into it. We've got a great show today. A great show, a sad show, because we are talking about the end of Lower Decks, which is it's a very sad time for all of us. I'm assuming we are all huge fans. I know Peter and I are. And Tony, I'm just guessing. But we'll jump into that, and then Peter, Tony will do that with us, and then she'll go on about her merry way, and then Peter and I will jump into talking about the first part of season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So, but before I do that, gotta pay some bills. But it's always a pleasure talking about the wonderful folks on our Secret Friend Squad over on Patreon. If you visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, you can try us out for 7 days for free and stay on board for as little as $2 a month. You get early episodes such as this show, which publishes on the weekend when you're a Patreon, and during the week if you're not. Ad-free shows of our other offerings. You get a lot of bonus shows, including a program that Peter and I frequently collaborate on called The Facts of Geek Life, where we take a genre show and a season and break down several episodes. He and I have been going through Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica for quite some time now, and just having an absolute great time. So we invite you to try us out and to join the ranks of these fine people. Derek Trevelyan, the figure dude, good buddy of mine. Francie, who is my wife's hairdresser, lovely lady. Luke Lohr, friend of the show, also known as Xbox Expansion Pass. My awesome Uncle Tim from South Haven, Michigan, big supporter of the show. Also John Sedorf, Phoenix Sisters Entertainment, our friends Kelly and Crayley. Brendan Myers, Corey and HD, Matthew Keel, and Kurt Krug. We had I didn't adapt it over, but we've got a couple of people on trials right now. I apologize. If you folks are listening, we will get you next time. And then without without, we would be nowhere at all. The awesome Nias family of the Twin Cities. Sean, Stella, and Henry are our Secret Friends Super Squad. We know that Sean is currently recovering from some spinal treatments because he had a herniated disc, which I know all about. It's very rough. So we wish him a speedy recovery. So Okay. We do actually have a news story this week, which is super cool. Or maybe not. Peter, I know you've had some mixed emotions the more that we talk about this. So I'm going to kind of defer to you. We did get a full trailer for the Section 31 television movie. It's the first television movie that Star Trek has ever really had, which is coming out in the new year on January 24 over on, of course, Paramount Plus. Peter, walk us through it. How are you feeling watching this trailer? What did you see? Just let loose. Open up the floodgates. Let's have it.
I mean, for me, this was a lot more of the same of what we've been seeing from the teasers and any of the other promotional stuff that's been going on with this. So there's a lot of like action segments, a few like brief character introductions kind of interspersed in there. So we get like a really, really brief visual of Rachel Garrett, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Not in Starfleet uniform. So, which we assumed this was all going to be like, clandestine off doing something else. So there's no Starfleet vessels in the trailer anywhere. So we still don't get like a good, clear idea of when this is supposed to be. We're all assuming it's the Lost Era because Garrett's presence, but we're still not really clear.
Right.
I at least am still getting like super, super huge Guardians of the Galaxy Suicide Squad vibes from this. And I like those in their own right.
Okay.
I don't like them in Star Trek.
Okay. Yeah. You've been saying so, and it's no surprise, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's just not for me. I don't really think it's, in part, I don't like the take of, I don't like when Section 31 is brought forward front and center. Yeah. They work better as like a sneaky organization. They're not the CIA or the NSA. Right. It's supposed to be something that's more in the background, more insidious and scary. And this doesn't make it scary. It makes them, we're the good guys. We just do bad things. Like, that's not really Section 31.
Yeah, that's how I'm kind of feeling as well. Tawny, talk to me about your vibe. Obviously, this is spun off of Star Trek Discovery. Where do you land with Discovery? Were you a fan? Were you somewhere in the middle?
I actually haven't watched it yet because I have so many different fandoms that I'm a part of. I have to pick and choose.
Sure.
But in this last year, I've been doing a rewatch of TNG DS9, which I just finished, and I'm now into Voyager because while I was watching season 2 of Picard, I thought, okay, I'm enjoying all these cameos and all these walk-ons, but it would be better if it was fresh in my mind. Like I'd be more excited. So I stopped watching it, and now I've spent at least a year going through, and I just haven't focused on Discovery. But as somebody who doesn't know Discovery but is familiar with the concept of Section 31, I thought it looked cool.
Okay.
It looked gritty. It's not like Peter said, it does not seem to me to be this typical Star Trek thing really going on. I can see the whole Suicide Squad vibe going on, but it made me excited to go watch Discovery. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think that is not a bad thing at all. I will kind of split the difference from positive to negative. I suppose I'll say, I've always had this attitude, and it was Jen Watson, who used to guest with us quite frequently, was fond of saying, there's always something somewhere in every Star Trek that I can find a way to enjoy. She was speaking for herself. And I tend to agree. One of my biggest grievances about Discovery is that the show as a whole felt kind of unnecessary, particularly in the first part of this series, because it was a prequel that didn't need prequelizing. If they would have said it during its ultimate setting, which is 1,000 years in the future. Sorry, Tawny, that's relatively well known. So I apologize if you disagree and I'm spoiling something. I'm sorry about that. But this is spun off of that because the main character in this, Michelle Yeoh's Emperor Georgiou, who is from the Terran universe, which if you're familiar with that from DS9 or from TOS, you'll definitely know where that's coming from. So will this have an influence of that? Will this feel a little bit more like something new or different? Will it be the Guardians / Suicide Squad vibe? I'm not sure. I know for a fact that screeners are going out. I have not received one yet, but I know that my friend and Patreon member Kurt Krug, who is my journalist buddy, watched it at the end of last week. He did not seem enthused. He said he felt it. It was more like the movie Dune than Star Trek. Which I thought, what does that mean? Yeah, I'm really curious.
Which version of Dune, though? Because there's like 3.
Yeah. He did not elaborate because I asked him not to. Because I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to watch this thing now, or certainly if I'm going to watch it in January, I don't really want any more preconceptions going into it based on somebody else's opinion. So
that's fair.
Yeah, so
he did like Michelle Yeoh, though. She's great.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
I think she's fantastic. I just don't care for the character that much. So that's where I'm torn on a lot of these things. Like I like the actors, or I like the concept. I just don't like how it falls together.
Yeah. So we will absolutely know for a fact, this time next month, because this airs in just over a month. It airs again on the 24th of January, and we are recording this just before Christmas. Merry Christmas, because this will come out 2 days before Christmas. Though you don't have much for Christmas theme going on. I was wearing my Christmas shirt yesterday. I did a couple.
We're not even talking about Generations, so
we're not even talking about. I know we did talk about it relatively recently because it had an anniversary, and yes, Sean Farrick, who will be guest starring with us in our next segment, did remind me when we were getting him set up as a guest star that, hey, watch Generations. It's a Christmas movie. So there you go, listeners. There's your recommended additional. I won't say homework, but kind of viewing for this holiday is go watch Generations and enjoy that part in the middle where Picard has the obnoxious family and the prissy wife and the big Christmas tree and all that stuff. So, well, cool.
The Victorian children with the space toys. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of a weird, because the Nexus was all about fantasy, so it's like. To me, it's a really weird fantasy. And I remember back when it came out, somebody was doing a compare contrast, like Kirk versus Picard. It's like, oh, Picard has a fantasy about having a bunch of obnoxious kids and a prissy wife that makes you want to vomit. And Kirk fantasizes about shacking up with some chick. So I'm like, it doesn't get any more cut and dry than that. So, all right, well, cool. Let's move on. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the movie when it comes out. I'm expecting we'll have a guest to join us. Still working on that, but regardless, you'll get the unvarnished from Peter and myself. Hopefully, it will defy expectations, and Peter will love it. Who knows? That's the beauty of doing trying out something new and different. So, all right, let's get into it. Star Trek Lower Decks 2-part series finale. Yeah. Ooh. Wow. There's a lot going on here. Peter, as I did last time, I kind of stole the summary from Wikipedia, though the link is to Memory Alpha. So I'm going to toss number 9 to you. Please read what you feel is appropriate.
All right.
So that it doesn't turn into a book report. And then we'll just kind of pinball around. I have a page of notes. I assume, Tawnya has thoughts, and we'll just go round robin and talk about what we're thinking. But Peter, take us away.
All right, so episode 9 is Fissure Quest. Great name. So this is one of those episodes that doesn't really take place with any of the characters that we know, technically. Right. At least not the main cast. So we get like a bookend.
Right.
We start out with the gang in the bar, and it's like, I wonder what my transporter clone is doing. Whoosh. And then we find out what he's doing. So William Boimler is on a Defiant class starship, Anaximander.
That's a word.
That's
it is one of the early Greek philosophers. He is known for the cosmic. He's one of the primal cosmic force. Is one of.
I thought it was absolutely made up nonsense. So I appreciate it. Setting me straight.
As a philosophy major, I grinned from ear to ear when I heard that.
Right.
So anyway, the Anaximander is on a mission to stop all of these giant rifts that we've been seeing throughout the show, and they haven't been able to find who's been causing it. So we see a shuttlecraft get pitched through a rift. They pick up the occupant. It ends up being an engineer version of Beckett Mariner, who is much less adventurous than the one we know. They also pick up at the beginning, they pick up a Harry Kim, who is a Lieutenant Harry Kim, who then joins.
And wearing the same uniform as you, so it's a little different.
And then he happens to join the crew of the Anaximander, which is primarily Harry Kim's.
We see at least probably 5 or 10 Harry Kims. I mean,
there's like 10 of them. Yeah. We have our main cast of, interestingly, all returning voices except for one. Right. Because Curzon didn't really have a voice.
Right, exactly.
So we have Curzon Dax as our pilot. We have T'Pol as our science officer. Jolene Bylock actually returned, which is really cool. I thought.
Awesome.
I didn't think she was going to come.
It's my understanding, two things, that she had left acting altogether and just has a normal life, got married and raised kids. So I think this may be one of the first things she's done in 15, 20 years. And she requested just to be billed as Jolene, which, for anybody who loves Dolly Parton,
that's chef's kiss. That's really fun. So we have those two. Then we have obviously we have Boimler, and then we have a holographic version of Dr. Bashir and the doctor of the ship, Garrick.
Right. I love that, by the way.
Who is also still an Obsidian Order agent.
It's musical chairs on this weird ship.
It's so ridiculous. It's really funny, but it's so ridiculous.
I feel like they were picking jobs out of a hat. You'll be the doctor. You'll be the helmsman. Yeah, exactly. It's just very weird.
And it's really funny because, like, this version of T'Pol this is after she's been married to Trip for a very long time, and so she says multiple things about human emotions that are really quite funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're flying around trying to find this other ship. Eventually, Mariner helps them to figure out a way to basically push it into a rift that they can know where it's going to be beforehand. And lo and behold, what ship comes through? It's the SS Enterprise from the concept art and the motion picture.
Right. I was trying to pin it down. I'm like, it's a ring ship or whatever.
I immediately knew what it was, and it made me just giggle.
I knew it was super familiar. Like you said, we've seen it in illustration form.
Yeah.
And Eagle Moss, which was the company.
Yeah, they made one.
Yeah, they made one, which I don't have it. So I would.
Star Trek Online has not made it yet. I wouldn't be surprised if after this they do.
Yeah, exactly.
So they chase down the ship, they fire at it, eventually it crash lands kind of on a bog planet inhabited by angry carnivorous axolotls from what I can gather. Which is hysterical because apparently they're really nice in our universe, but these ones are not.
Terran universe, everybody's nasty.
So they get put into prison, and you see the crew wearing Enterprise style jumpsuits, and lo and behold, it's Lily Sloan.
That's just, it's wild because she looks, older than when we saw her in First Contact. So you can tell some time went by, but instead of inventing the warp engine,
they invented a transdimensional drive.
Exactly, which travels at obviously sublight speed. It doesn't have warp speed or.
Yeah, they just travel interdimensionally and discover new universes.
Right.
Which is, interestingly, you have this whole bit with Boimler complaining about that of like, oh, well, then that's nothing new.
Yeah.
But there's another really cool through line that goes through about how friendship transcends universal boundaries, which is really cool. Eventually, they all break out. They fight the angry axolotls. Curzon Dax finally gets to show off his Klingon battle skills and beat them all to crap. They get on the Anaximander and try to leave, but the Lieutenant Harry Kim steals the.
It is.
I don't think they do say what the name of the ship is, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
You know what? I know it because it's the Beagle. It's very
it's the Beagle.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was like, I know it's a science reference. Yeah. So
it's an Enterprise reference because it's Porthos.
It's two because the Beagle was also Darwin's ship.
Oh, there you go.
So all of the Kims take the ship and they're going to fly in to try to find a universe where all Kims can be promoted to lieutenant, because the one lieutenant's like, you guys are all ensigns. This is so wrong.
You got to have goals. Oh my gosh.
Yep. So they go there. The Anaximander tries to catch up to it. They basically pull a Picard maneuver at one point, just do a micro warp jump. They beam all of the other Harry Kims off the ship because they're like, we don't really want to do this. This is bad.
Right.
The one Harry, Lieutenant Kim, decides that he's going to continue, causing a fracture in the rift. Mariner and Sloan are able to confine it to one universe and William Boimler says, "Send it to mine. They can handle it," and sends a message off to Brad. He sends it off to Bradward.
I love his confidence in Bradward right there.
I know.
And then the follow up is really funny. It's like, oh, he can handle it as long as he doesn't freak out. What do we see? He gets it. And then he runs off and we hear crashing. It's
very classic Boimler. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's break this down. We'll go to our guest first. Peter, you pin back and give any additional thoughts, and then I'll wrap it up. So, Tawny, by all means.
Well, my favorite part of the whole episode was all of the Harry Kims. Especially because I'm watching Voyager right now. So it's, you ask yourself, why is he never promoted all that time? And I just loved how they played with that, that little inside joke. And the one Harry Kim that got promoted, his morals are a little questionable.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I liked that. I did. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
But,
so go ahead, please.
Now, I loved it when they pulled Lily Sloan in.
Yeah,
that was great.
It was. I kept watching. I was like, I know her. What did she do? Like, what was she in? And I had to go Google it because it had been so. I mean, that movie was 1996.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, pushing on 30 years. Yeah.
I am older now. I don't remember what I watched last week. So, but all that made me do is, okay, now I've got to, next year, my goal is to rewatch every single Star Trek movie there is, because it was just so great. It was great to see her character again.
And I love it how even they couldn't play, because Mariner's like, "Don't I know you? You seem super familiar." And then she grabbed it. So they really upped their inside baseball game.
They had so many. This was
deeper.
Like the episode. This was like the episode I was expecting, where it's like, okay, you're going to have some sort of like cameo bonanza because you guys love doing that,
right?
So.
And I love
this is where they put all their cameos in, which was really fun.
Yeah, and Curzon Dax was great because we've seen him twice. We saw him in a non-speaking role in the first episode of DS9, where Jadzia is remembering becoming Dax, and then we see him in the form of Odo in the episode. Was it Rejoined? What was the name of that episode? Season 3.
It's not Rejoined. It's
not Rejoined.
I'll have to look it up. I don't remember.
It doesn't matter.
I know the episode. I can't remember the name.
But this and the voicing was by Fred Tatasciore, who is one of the regular voice actors. He's Shax, and I think some other additional voices. But I felt like they did a nice balance between making Curzon be like Odo, which was a great homage to the late Rene Auberjonois. I thought that was pretty great. Cool. All right. Any other thoughts, Tawny, before Peter gets his last rattle?
No, other than I love the fact that the very confident William Boimler is like, I trust Brad Boimler, and I'm going to throw this situation onto him. We talked about it before, but it was. I just kind of liked that trust he had in him.
If only the brothers Riker, the clone duplicates Riker could have gotten along well, then maybe we wouldn't have had Tom Riker joining the Maquis and stealing the Defiant back again to the Defiant. So it just kind of goes around in a circle. That did one quick sidebar, just because we mentioned duplicates. I do love how when they pick up Ensign Engineering Mariner, she talks about, he mentions, or William mentions, no, we're transporter clones. He said, oh, that happened in my universe. We had a duplicate Troy. And I thought, I bet that Troy, if you think about the episode Second Chances, which we talked about just recently, I bet she was so horned up that she just ripped Riker apart because think about how horny Tom Riker was in that episode. I mean, think about her with her empathy, and she's all, you know what I mean? So, I know. It's a weird fantasy. I don't know. Knock it off. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. It's going to make me uncomfortable. Oh, all right, Peter. Other thoughts before I give my 2 cents. So most of it has been said, which I love.
Yeah,
we do a good job of that.
I really liked the deep digs in this episode with like the SS Enterprise and bringing back to Paul like the Enterprise show references. Because they really leaned into the characters, did a lot of really fun and goofy stuff because they're obviously alternate versions.
Right.
The only one who's not like, this is definitely an alternate version is T'Pol.
Right.
Just because she's still T'Pol. Everyone else is like a whole different level of nuts.
Right.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
T'Pol is T'Pol.
There's a mixed nuts, which I think is an old Steve Martin film. That's what you call this.
That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So this was like, I really like this. I really enjoyed how they had William Boimler just absolutely shit on the multiverse because it's just
my gosh,
hysterical.
I did.
Like, I hate the multiverse. It's so boring.
I jumped.
It's like,
yeah.
It's like, William, I feel your pain. Like, I like multiverse stories. I like how they usually work in Star Trek, but it is kind of exhausted at this point. So I just thought it was hilarious.
It's pretty tropey. I did jump forward for a working title for this episode as because, multiverse.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
That's really how you can explain. And of course, if we stumble upon something greater, we'll change the name. But I thought, that's the trope that this not only really leaned on, but really stepped on it at the same time by saying, by William just being like, I'm so sick of the multiverse. It's just a rehash. We're just going to see a bad version of somebody we already know. And I'm sick of it. I am so, he's just so super duper over it. And I love this. I do love that, they need to generate subspace gluons, which I think is a great name of a cover band, maybe like a David Bowie, Spiders from Mars. I think. A
gluon is a real thing, so
that's news to me. I did. Damn you, Two Pip Kim, which sounds like Two Gun Kid, who was a Marvel Comics character from the 1970s.
That's funny. Yeah.
I love the Beagle. I'm Harry effing Kim is a great one. And he disappears and he goes in the riff and creates a super riff, which is obviously gonna lead us into the next episode. So I really loved. I'm so sick of the effing multiverse, says every Marvel fan since 2019. Because you're just drilling down so much. So, all right, let's go around the horn and at least give this one a rating. Tawnya, that's something else we do. We just give it an out of 10. And feel free to just shoot from the cuff. If you're going out of 10, where are you at?
This was one of my favorite episodes of the season. So I'd have to say 10.
Wow.
Ridiculous, and that's what I loved.
Solid 10. Gotcha. Peter.
I'm leaning towards a 10 on this one too. This one's like they went all out. They went for it full send, and they actually stuck the landing. It was really so many deep cuts, so many ridiculous, so much like meta self-awareness that's just really hysterical.
I hear you. I will have to be somewhat the iconoclast, but not by much. There were Easter eggs, but it almost kind of felt like too much technobabble, which I didn't really think was possible. But the thing that made this so strong for me is that social commentary about the multiverse of madness. And the fact that, now Marvel can do anything ever because, it's just another universe. It's just because today, the third and final season of What If came out on Disney Plus. So the first episode was out and they had a totally ridiculous story about mechanized Voltron Avengers fighting a Godzilla Hulk. You can do anything. It just doesn't matter. And so I do love that William was the voiced all of us who are just really sick of the concept. They just really can't take it anymore. So this was like an 8 out of 5 out of me, which is rare. But I could push it to a 9, I suppose. But I thought I'd at least be a little critical, which is not easy.
Usually that's my job.
Yeah, with as much as we love this show. So, all right, I'm going to take us through the series finale, episode 10. And this is a great spin on the final episode of Picard, which was called the final. What was it? Was it the Final Generation? What was the name of the last episode of Picard? Help me out here. But this is a spin on this. Regardless, it's called The Next New Generation because the first episode of the last season of Picard was called The Next Generation. Yeah. So maybe the last generation. I think it was the last generation. But at any rate, we won't get hung up on that too much. After receiving William Boimler's message, the Cerrito is dispatched to close the rift, and I love this, which is extending a Schrodinger possibility field, or an S field, which I thought was awesome. Think about that cat in that box.
Yep,
that is having strange effects on everything in the vicinity. Meanwhile, Ma'a and his brother Malor, from a couple of episodes back, the Klingon wine guys, are on the run from Dorg and Barg's vengeful sister, Relga. Great, Relga of the Hill People, and then ends up seeking asylum on board the Cerritos as Belga's fleet.
Malor does.
Yeah.
Ma's not too thrilled.
Right. But they are there. They're there on the ship.
Yeah.
The big, I couldn't remember her name. Big fight. We do see the return of Ensign Ali from a few episodes ago with her lightning powers. She does help. She does help eventually to defeat them. Because to go into the Schrodinger field, it's surrounded by all these layers of multiversal energy. So as you fly through it, things are going to change up. Like there's a great scene where there's one big Klingon ship and 3 birds of prey. One of them gets zapped by the field and turns into a sailing ship, and you just watch all the bodies flying to space.
Into a sailing barge. All hands lost.
Yeah, it was Ransom was narrating that. So Cerritos is going through it. And it was great because we see the transition that it becomes a Freedom class, which is one of the Kit Bash ships that we see in the graveyard at Wolf 359. It turns into a Sovereign, turns into a Miranda, turns into a No Birth, turns into a Terran ship
at one point.
It was Easter eggs, bam, 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 bam. It was you could barely keep up. So Mariner is able to create a dam that contains the destructive energy but leaves the rift permanently open. This takes us 80% through the end of the episode, and then we get the final act, like the final commercial break, where Starfleet decides that they've got to they want to start exploring the multiverse, overseen by Captain Freeman and her husband, the Admiral, aboard Starbase 80, which they move to be in front of this.
Yeah, they tracked her over
yeah, exactly, and because it's immune to the rift's effect due to its age and lack of sophistication, and the Anaximander crew, so they're all there as well. Ma'a is given command of Relga's fleet, and Jack Ransom becomes captain of the Cerritos. Before he's on the bridge in our final scene, Ransom promotes both Boimler and Mariner to co-first officers.
Provisional. That's not a thing. Well, it is now.
It sounds like a sitcom. It sounds like a sitcom plot. And Rutherford, who's been struggling load this 2-parter with his tech and being just angry in general because his implants are bugging him and he just feels unsatisfied, just tears him out. And you see him at the end of the episode looking like Eugene Cordero, who is an absolutely great guy who voices him, who I've met on a couple of different occasions. And that ends the show. Wow. I'm going to kick it back to Tawny before I have any additional commentary. Take it away.
I liked the episode. I did love it. It was my second or third favorite. I felt like it was a little too convoluted with the Klingon storyline, but I can see why they needed to have a little more
threat.
Drama.
Yeah.
We're not just fighting the rift, we're fighting the Regla and the whole scenario there. So I got it. It just felt busy for me at the front of the episode.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. But I loved the Schrodinger cloud. Is that what they called it? The cloud?
The S field, or the Schrodinger
possibility field.
That was so much fun. And I remember I've watched it several times since it aired. And I remember watching it going, oh my God, I can't wait to see what else they turn into.
Yeah, right.
So I didn't recognize every single ship, but it was just a blast. I loved it. And I like the end. I like it.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts on that when we wrap up here, but I have a science question. Maybe I'll kick this back to Peter. With the rift being stabilized, how are they going to explore the multiverse if it only goes to one location, I assume?
It doesn't. So basically what I got from how they described what happened is they stabilized the expansion of it, but it's still like a giant hole into like that space in between all of the multiverses. So you can kind of go to whichever one.
Right.
So I could fly my ship in there, the Grand Petoskey, and I could say, and once I'm inside the rift, how do I then figure out?
It's not entirely clear how they. Again, it's going to be technobabble where they have to figure out how to. Navigate.
Good.
However, because the Anaximander also has already met Lily Sloan. And she's on the Anaximander. They now have the capability to navigate that space.
Mapping, yes exactly.
So they took away the need of the ship to open a rift. So now they all just need the navigational computing power that ship had
to leave a rift and then come back to one. That I think it's absolutely fascinating. And again, it's the most fertile story ground I think of almost any finale we've had, because most finales will be like, it wraps up and now everybody's going in their different directions, like they did with DS9 or Voyager. They got home at the last minute, or the Next Generation crew. Picard sits down and plays cards, but nothing really changes. They just go on about their merry way. TOS had no finale, TAS had no finale, so this felt
Enterprise. Yeah, we do not speak of Enterprise.
We do not. Yeah, Enterprise also had no finale at all in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Peter. So that was my question. But Peter, your thoughts before I kind of bring this to a close.
I thought that this was a fantastically hilarious episode. I will say that I was expecting another cameo in this one, which we didn't get.
Okay.
Just because they usually save a lot of like big ridiculousness for the final episode, but they did all of that in the previous one, so I get it. I mildly disappointed that they talked big game about the Enterprise being there and all it did was sit there.
And it appeared the Titan as well.
Or Enterprise and Titan, and based on the timeline, it's probably commanded by Worf, but we're not really sure.
No, well, that's
it's kind of a little dicey. It could be still Picard, but it's right on that little.
It is, because this is 80. Area. This is 82, and we know that the Romulan evacuation was halted in 85 because of the attack on Mars that we see in Picard, and then Picard leaves and blah blah blah. So you're right.
But it's still one of those things that we could have had a cameo from either one of them, and it would have been really funny.
Right? There was a beta canon novel that made it sound like he left right around this time. Which again, the thing about beta canon, I postulate, even though I'm a big kind of canonista, that if something in beta canon is not contradicted by alpha canon, then let it be your head canon. Let it be. There will be an answer. Let it be. Just let it be like the Beatles. It's okay.
Yeah. So I think they didn't do it because they didn't want to steal the thunder from the Cerritos and allow this crew to do everything themselves, which totally makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought a lot of the Schrodinger effect was just hysterical with things changing and cycling all through. I thought it was kind of a little tongue-in-cheek there at the beginning where we have an alternate universe, which is the Discovery Klingons appearing, which I thought was pretty funny.
Oh boy, and people are pissing their pants about that right now. I'm telling you.
Oh, they are, and I sat there and I was giggling a little bit because it was
Me too, but, because it was the thing that it's never sat right with me, but it's like whatever, you know what I mean?
But it was just a really funny little moment, and you can take it how you will, but it was just funny. So all of that, I really liked how you had to have the entire crew work together. When Mariner and Boimler brought it to Captain Freeman's attention, there's nothing of like the early seasons where it's like, you guys are full of shit. Like, this is just crap. You're some of my best officers. I trust you. It's like, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's gross. It shows you that things have really changed. You've been through a lot.
Yeah, it shows like this episode really showed how like our lower deckers have really joined together and like grown together as kind of a group of friends, and how like the Cerritos is kind of a family sort of deal. I thought it was great how we got characters who we haven't seen in a while do things like, what's her name? The Trill engineer from the very first episode.
I think it's Barnes.
Who went on a date with Rutherford. She was instrumental in helping to fix the engines.
Right.
We had
Ollie,
who was I thoroughly enjoyed her from earlier in the season, but she finally got to use her powers for good.
Right.
It's like, I don't like showing my powers off because they're useless, and she completely
she saved the day without a doubt.
Yeah. She was like the main reason why they survived, and then all the Klingons turn into the Klingon bug wharf things from Genesis.
And they tear the ship. I do love in that instance. I'll touch upon the fact that Relga has a pet. I assume Targ.
Chihuahua Targ,
it basically shows that Targs are also obnoxious dogs like Chihuahuas. And I say that, but my beloved Albus is 1/4 Chihuahua, and he behaves like it sometimes. But I love that
funny thing was also the
he turned
ship.
he turns into a clam when everybody devolves.
Yeah, that was funny. There was also the whole comment about like, why aren't all their ships changing so much? That's because the Klingons don't do any damn new designs. They always look like a stupid bird.
Hilarious.
They like the bird stuff. I was particularly enamored with the fact that at one point our head Klingon, and again I mix up names, calls Boimler this purple boy, which is just what I'm going to call him now. And then he almost immediately afterwards, he and Boimler do a high five and say friendship, but it's a Vulcan salute. I thought that was pretty fantastic. The uniting of science besties, because you see T'Lyn and Tendi are at odds for a chunk of this episode. Yep. And we did and then obviously Dr. Tana coming in. Did we just save the effing universe? Reminds me of Rocket's line from Guardians of the Galaxy. We'll be able to charge twice as much for universe saving now. But the last act of this was just so great because you brought, you saw the entire 5 season series takes place over 2 years. So from 2380 to 2382. Tawny, we're really nerds about dates and stuff on this because we like to really pin things in. And so, think about people you've known or a job you've had, over a 2-year span. I mean, things really change. People you meet and friendships that you grow. And I think that they really reflect that. The Discovery Klingons, I liked in that first, I think it was even maybe just right after the cold open in the credits, you see the side of the ship, you get this 3-deck windows view where you see something's happening on each deck, and one of them is the bar, and you see that Jack is sitting there because he's narrating it. And then we have Shax and Dr. Tana say, hey, we both got the afternoon off. You want to play some sexy Treasure Island? He says, as long as I get to be Long John beep. I don't even want to know what the beep is. I don't even want to use my imagination about that. But
you're not supposed to.
But I just absolutely love this ending because, as I touched upon, so many shows, you just feel like there's no definitive ending. Like, DS9, everybody's going to different places, and it's like, well, it'll just never be the same again. Where this is continuing, but you've kind of moved the pieces around on the chessboard, but the ship is still going on. Where it felt like at the end of TNG, even though I really love All Good Things, that final episode, it was just kind of like, all right, well, they had a thing, and now tomorrow is Wednesday. You know what I mean? It's just nothing.
It did feel that way.
Nothing was really significant in the way people's lives changed. Where DS9, everything changed, but it was sad because Cisco was gone and left Cassidy with, she's still having this baby and blah, blah, blah. But, there wasn't a brave new day happening where this was just like, we changed, but we've, a lot of the core great people are here. Mariner has that great speech where she's narrating and it kind of wraps up in the money shot of our 5 main characters in the turbo lift headed to the bridge. It was just great. I did, of course, Ransom is musing over, well, every captain I know has a catchphrase when they say, go to warp. And she's like, let's come up with one for me. And Mariner's like, well, maybe we should just we will wait and it'll come out organically. And he's like, no, engage the core. And it was just eye rolls. She's like, oh, not a workout joke. Oh my God. Oh, and then he says circle up and Mariner's like, oh God, no, we're going to do a coaching thing. I'm not into it.
Yes.
It was so on point with the character, though.
Yeah. I know. That was him.
I loved it when he caught the Klingon's fist, and he said, the Klingon goes, how are you so strong? And he says, oh God, I've already forgot, because it's exercises that we do. It's HIIT, yeah. High intensity interval training.
Yeah.
Yes, which is that's one of the exercise routines on Body that April and I do. So is what I'm working on too. Don't quite look like Ransom, but I'm working on it. So, oh my God. So, all right, ratings around the horn before we wrap this up and at least just have some wrapping up thoughts. So, Tawny, how do you rate it?
9.
9. So
I loved it. Just not as much as episode 9. The ending is what really made me love it for everything you said.
Yeah.
But yeah,
absolutely.
I was maybe a 9.5.
I like 9.5.
A lot that it just felt a little busy, so 9.5.
Right. Yeah, gotcha. Peter.
I'm gonna put a 9.5. Only because I think that the conflict there could have been a little bit more involved with the multiverse as the conflict, because they used it so much in the previous episode. Just for a little follow through. But other than that, it's fantastic. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're completing the three-peat here, so I'm also a 9.5 on this one. I love the ending, and I mentioned I love Mariner's turbo lift speech. It gives everybody a place to be, but it also leaves the door open for a lot of different directions for things to happen. Probably the 0.5 deduction for me was the fact that it wasn't made clear to me how the dimensional rift works, because I was just thinking about it like the wormhole, like DS9's wormhole.
Oh, yeah,
it goes from here to there.
A lot like the wormhole situation.
Yeah, so I think that was not greatly explained, but I'm glad I had Peter here to ask about it. So, all right, let's wrap this up super briefly, as we always do when we wrap up a season of any show. Let's do a favorite episode from the season, one you didn't really care for, and then maybe something that you feel like they should have done. Like Peter said, there should have been a great cameo or something. So, Tawny, favorite episode of the season? You've already said.
Well, other than those two, I loved Starbase 80.
Oh, same.
It was absolutely ridiculous that they turned into what almost seemed like zombies.
Yeah.
But there was just something about the whole episode that I was like, I loved.
Yeah.
I liked all of the episodes. So if you put a gun to my head and said, you've got to choose one or your dog dies, I would have probably picked episode 3. I think it was 3. It was the one.
The Nanite Hotel.
Yeah.
That one wasn't my favorite.
God. It's funny. Why. I'm going to align with those. I'll jump ahead and say I'll align with those same exact two. That or the purple data one where they go to find purple data.
Oh yeah.
I like that one too.
The time dilation
dilated
one.
Yeah.
As far as what I wish we had seen is time travel. Some of my favorite episodes from TNG, DS9, and even Voyager. Like, I love it when Tuvok goes back to the 90s.
Yeah.
And he's looking very, very uncomfortable wearing some 90s pop culture type clothes. And I would have loved to see T'Lyn wearing
a headband, because Vulcans always have to wear a headband.
Yeah. And a little choker and maybe some Doc Martens or combat boots,
just
sundress,
looking like she was in a Riot Girl kind of band. Yeah.
Like, I think even though she
4 non-blondes. There you go.
She would have, her whole vibe would have kind of fit with that kind of sort of angry 90s girl.
Oh my God. I didn't even know that I wanted that. I'm gonna tap out because Tawny said the 3 things that I was thinking. So now Peter is gonna have to finish this, because I would never have thought that I wanted to see T'Lyn look like the chick from 4 Non-Blondes. That was just wow. Oh my God. You just showed me up.
See it?
Peter, find a way to redeem me here, because I'm in trouble.
I mean, if I had to pick a favorite episode of this season, it still might be Fissure Quest.
Okay.
Just because the concept was just hilarious, and it was just really, really well executed.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said plenty of what it was. What I could have done without, as much as I appreciate a lot of the plot of Gods and Angels, the
Gods and Angles,
Gods and Angles, yeah, that one. I enjoyed the plot with Ollie. That was the most fun. The Romeo and Juliet part was kind of like meh.
Yeah, and I could have left go too far.
Yeah. So I could have left that one a little bit, like half of the episode.
Yeah.
I liked Mariner and Ollie. That part was great. Just the other stuff was.
Yeah. I hear you.
It wasn't my favorite. It wasn't terrible. It's just
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Any moments that I wish I could have seen. I mean, I kind of mentioned it with the new Next Generation. I kind of wish that there had been a big kind of cameo in the end, either with the Enterprise, because I thought that with the Schrodinger field, when I was doing my what could happen,
right,
because you usually save like your biggest surprising cameos for the end. So I was thinking, well, what if the Enterprise shows up and then we don't know what happened to the Enterprise, so Worf's in command or something, and
Michael Dorn, bring him
paradox
back.
happens to it, something goes wrong. I don't know. Maybe it turns into the original Enterprise, and we get an alternate version of William Shatner, which would have been hysterical.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, that would be
so
great.
that's what I was like. Are they saving like a Patrick Stewart or William Shatner for the end, just to blow everyone's brains away, just for 2 minutes?
Right.
So that's like the one thing that I thought would have been really, really hysterical in the end. Just as like a little like chef's kiss at the end of the episode.
Absolutely.
But I mean, only because the only reason that I got speculating on Shatner was because we had like the fan stuff and things that happened a couple of weeks ago. And so I was like, maybe this is a tease.
Right.
Obviously not. Right. But that's what I was that's what I thought that episode could have just used, was just a little bit more of a big universe tie-in, just to that final little chef's kiss, that final little wink and nudge right at the end, because that would have been very Lower Decks.
Well, you know what? It takes me right back to thinking about the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need, and I think we got what we needed.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, so. Very, very satisfactory. Well, oh my God, that is Lower Decks. Our next episode will be a series retrospective with, if everything works out, Sean Farrick, who is part of Trek Culture, which is a great YouTube channel, has agreed to join us. So we're very excited about that. But we're going to bid goodbye to Tawny. Tawny, thank you so much for joining us. This has been absolutely incredible. Where do people find you out there in the multiverse of the social media?
I'm on Threads. I'm not sure if anybody really wants to follow me on Threads.
It's not that bad. Sometimes it's a little tough, but it's not that bad.
Sometimes, Sometimes
you get a little mad. I understand.
On Threads, on Instagram, kind of.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, that's about it.
And you're on Blue Sky too, right?
I am. I don't use it. It feels very corporate, like official.
Oh boy.
Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm more of a laid back kind of.
More mellow. Good deal.
Mellow. Rebel, which feels like Threads.
The Rebel, Threads, Rebel Threads. Ooh, Rebel Threads. I like it. Well, very good.
Sounds like a
Right.
brand.
Well, we're going to take a quick little break here. It'll be so quick you don't even know. And Peter and I will come back when we talk about DS9. So we will return. Bye, Tawny. All right, we're back, and it's time for Deep Space Nine. We are getting into season 6. My goodness. We're coming off a very intense, obviously, season 5 finale, The Call to Arms, which obviously we've talked about quite some time back because we cycled through the other season 5s that we had to talk about before we got back to this. But the Dominion War is on. It's not a Cold War. It is a war. And we jump in with the first episode, which I will tackle. And it's not one of these like, oh, it'll be over. We'll find a way to wrap it up after the first episode. No, we're getting into full-blown. This is going to be going on. This is the focus of the series from here on out. So, Peter, jog my memory. You first started watching. Was DS9 one you were watching when you were younger? Or did you come to it a little bit later on?
No, so I only grew up watching really TNG and a couple episodes of TOS here and there because TOS was on really, really late night. So I first watched Deep Space Nine in 2009.
Oh man! Okay,
so I was watching this like Netflix over 10 years over. No, I was not watching it on Netflix. This was the early days of YouTube. So
we don't talk pirate stuff. So we don't
talk about how I watched it, but I did watch it. I was overseas.
You do watch it perfectly legally now. So that is good. You watch it on Paramount Plus, which is where people watch 99.99999% of Star Trek.
At this point, like the episodes were hosted on the Star Trek website at one point, so that may have been that period too. I don't remember exactly.
It's regardless. There's no hard evidence to get you either way. All right. Well, episode 1 of the season is Time to Stand. Alan Craker is the director, Heritage Guy, did a lot of DS9 and Voyager. I know that Garrett and Robbie speak very highly of him over on the Delta Flyers. Ira, Stephen Bear, and Hans Beimler are doing the writing, so you got the big dogs. We're going full bore from September of 1997, 3 months into the war. DS9 is still under Dominion control. Sisko and his crew, still aboard the Defiant, are given a mission to destroy a vital Ketracel White facility deep in Dominion space using the captured Jem'Hadar ship from the episode The Ship last season. Jake is working for the Federation News Service. Remember, he's still on DS9 because he's an idiot. Mm-hmm. Odo is head of Terok Nor Security and supported grossly by bootlicking Vorta Wayun, the spectacular Jeff Combs.
Yes, brown-nosing Wayun.
The brown-nosing for a guy that has no brown hole. He still has a brown nose.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So this was... holy shit. I mean,
this was really quite the season opener.
It was really hard to even imagine what direction they would go in with one of the single most beautiful shots, VFX shots that was ever done in Star Trek up to that point, which is the last 10 seconds of the season 5 finale, where you see the Return and Defiant fly and the camera pulls out. And you see just a field of Klingon and Starfleet vessels, and they become part of it, and they're racing off in another direction. And then you're like, they're headed to DS9. We're going to come back, and everything's going to be we're going to be good. We're going to go off in another direction. Nope. We get an opening shot of a battered, thin fleet of Starfleet ships limping along, some being towed by others.
Yeah, Excelsior is being towed by like a Miranda.
You've got the tug vessels, and you've got a couple of those little Peregrine class fighter ships that one of them is arcing energy off the side. Like, everybody is in shit shape.
Yeah, everyone is
bad
beat to hell.
Yeah, and so you get a very I'm weary conversation on the bridge of the Defiant where they're at low light. So it's either nighttime or it's just they're on low power mode because they've been running, and they're talking about just how horrible things are going. They hook up with the Rataran, and so Worf and Dax see each other for the first time in 5 weeks, and they're he's right away talking about their wedding and stuff, and so there's a little levity,
which is really funny because it's like, oh, it can wait. It will not wait, Worf.
Exactly.
It's like, he will talk about nothing else.
Bashir walks in and he says, we were waiting for news of the 7th Fleet, and for only 14 of 150 ships survived, and so Sisko gets so mad that he punches and breaks the glass. So it's just like everybody is just pushed to the limits. Like, we need a win. So so the episode is split between what's going on Terok Nor, DS9, and then going to Starbase 375, where we meet Admiral Ross for the first time. His only appearance in the now outgoing TNG Admiral uniform, because it's in the next episode that we get the Admiral uniform of Peter, what you're wearing right now, which is the first
with a different belt. In the first episode, and then the very next episode, they update the belt with the Federation logo.
That's kind of indicative of how they changed Sisko's first use of that uniform, where there were no colored sleeves and the badge was in the wrong place.
And he had his badge up here.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I'm drawing a blank of the name of the actor who played Bill Ross. He's since passed away, but it was a great role that endears through the rest of the series. They do get this really important mission, which in a lot of ways, not only is it critical, because if they cut off Ketracel White supply, the Jem'Hadar will die off and it will hurt the war effort. While they are successful in their mission, they cripple their ship, which leads into the next episode. But also, their mission really isn't a success because the Jem'Hadar don't die off, and I feel like it's never addressed, which is a little weird. I don't know, unless I'm missing something.
I mean, I think part of it might have to do with something that we get on later in the episodes, where like the wormhole is then accessible again,
right?
So maybe the Dominion are able to sneak Ketracel White through. I don't know.
Or they do find some other way to grow it.
Or they find a way to synthesize it. I don't remember.
They touch on that later, and I think either later in this season or in the next season, where the Dominion's doing some negotiating. And don't you remember where it's the Jack and the Jack Pack, the enhanced people who are a little wacky? They figure out that Damar is trying to negotiate for a planet where they can grow Ketracel White. That's what I remember. But it's not addressed here. While it's the main facility, it does. I mean, I know we're kind of getting into the weeds on this one, but it doesn't really do much. So,
No.
And this was, I believe this was the episode where we get the evil must be opposed. We get the Vedic who takes her own life in protest, which is a very powerful statement of the fact that Kira seems to become very complicit in like, well, there's not a whole lot I can do. I'm just kind of biding my time. And then she realizes that, if she doesn't turn up that terrorist Kira again, nothing's ever going to change. And so her little underground kind of kicks in high gear.
There's also some really, I don't remember if it's as much. It's definitely this episode, maybe the next one, or Sons and Daughters. But there's this whole stretch where Jake is really going after Odo and Kira, and it's not. You can take it in a good way, but I don't think it is because one, Jake knows these people and knows that like they're really struggling trying to do the right thing. And he is like, it's like, you're just, you're allowing all of these things and he's basically calling them collaborators, which is like the worst thing you can say to Kira.
Exactly.
So there's part of me that understands where he's coming from. But it's also like it's a little, and he realizes it. Like you see it in the final shot of him in Odo's office. He realized he screwed up, but it's just like sometimes it does matter how you say a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might be right, but you can't just like. Especially if it's like your friend and they're hurting, don't do it that way.
Yeah, don't stick your finger in somebody's paper cut.
He kind of shows like his schmucky, the schmucky side of journalism. In that instance.
Yeah, and then also somebody who's just young and
and I mean part of it is he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just like I liked how they did bring that out of like he might be like thinking he's doing the right thing, but there's a time and a place, and sometimes that's not the right thing to do just then.
Exactly correct. So
and you see where Odo and Kira are coming from with like not wanting protests because they don't want people to get killed, and that like you see why they're doing what they're doing. Like you see the noble intentions, but like having the Vedic like make that statement of like evil has to be opposed, and getting Kira to be like, oh yeah, that kind of does need to happen, like that
a little bit.
That's a good thing. I mean, it's not a good thing what happened, but it's good that Kira realized like, and this comes up more in episode 3, but like this was kind of that turning point that we see of her becoming not complacent in the occupation this time around.
Exactly. So powerful stuff. And again, this is woven into the next episode as well. So what I kind of described about the Vedic, that may very well be. No, it's not in the second episode because the second no, it is because it's the third episode that is Sons and Daughters. So it does kind of glom together a little bit. The
first and second episode, the B plot on Tarek Noor kind of blends together.
Yeah, and so and then the third episode is very separate. But anyway, let's move on to the second episode. That's you.
Yeah. So episode 2 is Rocks and Shoals. For those who care, Stardate 51107.2. Directed by Mark Vehar, written by Ronald Moore. Aired on October 4th of 97. Cisco and his tired crew crash on a planet where they encounter a band of Jem'Hadar who have also crashed.
Exactly. So holy cow.
So we get a wounded Vorta, which is an interesting moment. And this character does show up again later. This is not his only appearance. So they figure out that the Starfleet crew has crashed there. Obviously, Cisco and everyone are trying to figure out like how do we get home because the transponder's underwater. The ship crashed in a lake. Which there's some pretty funny joking about like, oh, well, I could swim 500 meters down. Yeah, right, O'Brien.
Yeah, right.
Dax is severely injured.
Right.
Bashir is able to stabilize her, but it could go really bad, really fast. So eventually they bump into a Jem'Hadar patrol. They hold them off a little bit. And then the Horta and the Jem'Hadar kind of have this little kerfuffle about what they're going to do about it. The Vorta.
You kept saying Horta.
Like, decide.
That would have been an interesting twist to have.
That would have been a very interesting
Horta.
Episode.
That doesn't speak, but still conveys messages. It'd be incredible.
So, but the Vorta realizes that he really doesn't have any Ketracel White to give to his troops. And so he's going to lose control of them shortly. And so his solution is to have a parlay with Sisko where he talks to him about like, hey, I have a transponder. You guys can probably fix it. I'm going to surrender myself. If there's a prisoner exchange because Garrick and Bashir get caught. Eventually they kind of heal up the Vordo a little bit so he's not going to die. But he's like, hey, I'm going to send my soldiers over to you and I'm going to tell you exactly where they're going to be so you can kill them all. And then you can take me as a prisoner of war. So it's a complete schmuck move.
And it's one of those impossible decision, but it's not an impossible decision, and that's the back and
tries. He
that's
tries
the back and forth he has with his officers, and he's like, there's really not a choice. We can either do this or we can die, and it sucks that we have to kill these Jem'Hadar. And the lead Jem'Hadar is played by actor Phil Morris. I met him last summer at Fan Expo Chicago. He's an actor whose credits go all the way back to the original series when he was a child. He was one of Muri's kids, but he was also in the Children Shall Lead.
Yeah.
And then he's been a Klingon, he's been a human, he's been it's a super nice guy, super duper nice guy. Really love talking with him, but he did great. He said, Sisko's like, you don't have to do this, and he said, well, it's not my life to give and it's not my right to refuse. So we're going to charge at you. And it turns into a shooting gallery. Even though in the course of it, the one ensign on Sisko's side does get killed in the crossfire. And then Keevan, who is the Vortis name, says, hey, if I would have had 2 more vials of white, you wouldn't have stood a chance. It was like, shut up, asshole. And obviously our people get out of there, but it's just ugly. It's just it's ugly. But it's ugly great. You can really appreciate what is happening in the storyline. So yikes. Just a punch of a 2-parter. You know that things are not going to wrap up quickly or neatly. It's just going to continue to get ugly. Really but anyway, our folks end up getting rescued by the Rotaran, and that leads us into the next episode, which is called Sons and Daughters. Jesus Salvador Trevino is the director. We got Thompson and Weddle doing the writing, so you've got the core writing staff engaged in this from October of 97. While on Jennifer Martok's ship, Worf, who is continuing to serve there, is reunited with his estranged son, Alexander, now played by an adult actor, Mark Warden, I believe is his name. Parallel story has to do with Zial, who is Gul Dukat's illegitimate daughter, who is also friends with Kira, who has been living on... Was she living on Bajor or living on Cardassia? She was living on...
She was living on Bajor, I think, because they talk about the university.
Right. So. And she ends up coming back to the station, and it turns into this endearing opportunity for Dukat to try to slime his way into Kira's life, because he wants to hook up with her. And he's now like, well, I can use Zial to have a thing where we have a party for her, and I invite her, and then I give her a party dress. And Kira smiles when she gets this delivery. And I love it how he ropes Damar into be like, oh, he wanted me to drop this package off, and he thought it'd be funny if I dropped this package off to you. And this is beautiful dress, but Kira looks and smiles, and then she throws it aside. And this is so prime Dukat. She returns it to Dukat and says, you know what, I can't take this. I don't like you. So I can't come to your party. I'm out of here. And she walks out. And then Zial walks out and says, hey, who was that? And Dukat goes, it was a delivery of this dress for you. It was just like, he's such a perfect fucking scumbag that he can just turn on a dime to turn around any situation. And then Zial's like, don't make me choose between you. And this is the truth. She's like, there's no choice. He's your father. It sucks, but sometimes you just can't have it all. And that's the way life works. I have been in situations in relationships or friendships in my past where somebody wants to put themselves between you and your family, and family is forever. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. Even if your family member isn't the greatest, I've made the mistake in the past of not siding with my family when I should have, and it's a lesson that I learned. But Zial's in a tough spot because her father is a genocidal madman. But it's
minor detail.
Minor detail. It's a situation that will continue to degrade over the next several episodes. But back on Martok. Back on Martok's ship. Now, this was a particularly, tight storyline for me, and again written by oh no, this was not written by Ron Moore, but it feels
this
like
is Thompson and Weddle.
Yeah, so. But they do a great job of doing a father-son story, and I remember it's so funny. I was 21 when this episode came out, and I was watching it with my dad, and my dad had recently gotten divorced, and he and I had started to from his second wife, who I was not close with, and she was not great for him, but he and I had started to really spend a lot of time together. I got to know him when I was working for him weekends and stuff home from college, and he made the comment watching this episode, well, this kid's really not making things easy for himself. And as a 21-year-old, I'm like, well, that sucks. He should really be bending over backwards for his kid and blah blah blah. It was the arrogance of youth, not having been a father myself, because at age 49, which is what I'm about to turn, my dad was absolutely right. This kid isn't making it easy for himself. He's being a jerk because he shows up. He's on his dad's turf. He wants to trash talk his dad for his dad just basically being what he was. And he said, hey, and Worf goes, I don't know when you changed your mind, but we had a conversation when you were a teenager that you didn't want to live the Klingon life.
Want anything to do with the Klingon stuff.
And I do. And that's why you went off and you're basically living your life as a non-Klingon, as a human. And he says, and then he just dances around the fact that you'd be better off if I was dead. And I'm like, this kid's just being a jerk. He's raking his dad over the coals. Granted, they didn't have a great father-son relationship, but at least what Worf said is absolutely true. This was this kid's choice to go off and not live a Klingon life. Now he is changing things up, wants to be part of the Klingon Defense Force, and he can't hack it because he can't keep up with the other Klingons. So at the end of it's a great conclusion that Worf says, there's a space battle and, people's lives are in danger, but Alexander comports himself somewhat honorably. And at the end of it, Martok and Worf and Alexander are together. And he says, I can't change what's happened in the past, but I can stand by you now, which is, boy, wow. That's all anybody can do when, I got a brother who I don't get along with. And my hope is I can say that to him someday. Hey, I can't change what's come between us in the past, but we can start over. And then Alexander says, well, I hope you mean it, and yeah, I hope he means it too. And so Alexander joins the House of Martok, and now they're all family. So super great episode. I love the duality of the two storylines. I'll probably even go. It's tough to say. I'm going to struggle to not make this one my favorite, but we got a 3-parter coming up.
We got a banger
that is so dynamic that we're going to be in trouble when we get there. But other thoughts on this one before we move on?
It's a really solid episode. I really like the dichotomy that's not dichotomy, but juxtaposition that's going on here, where you have at the beginning, Ziyal has everything that she wants, and then doesn't in the end, because that's just not how these things work, because it's like your dad's a psycho.
A little bit.
But then we have Alexander, who's at least on the surface level, is behaving like, I have nothing, my family sucks and all this. And then at the end, he more or less reconciles with Worf. Not fully. We see some more issues later on. But there's kind of a reconciliation between them, and then he joins the House of Martok, and so there's kind of a family put together at the end there. So I really like the juxtaposition here of you have this sociopath who's running his family, who everything seems fine on the surface, and then when you start to dig into it, it's like, this is bad. We in this episode we get some major creepy Dukat moments in this one. This is
like the one
I was watching. I was watching this episode, and I'm like, this reminds me why I don't like Dukat. Great character, well written, one of the best villains in Star Trek, but as a person, he sucks.
Everything he does is just so gross.
It's just nasty.
Best way to describe it. So
he's bad. And and then you have Worf, not Worf, but you have Martok, who's kind of like the I want to say patriarch of the family kind of standing in the back going like, okay, Worf, you have to figure this out, but I'm not going to force you to do anything. I'm not going to force Alexander to do anything.
He's
you
like
need
grandpa,
to figure this shit out together. Yeah. He's kind of grandpa going like, come on, guys, you're being
you can
children
do better
here.
You can do better. So. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. All right, take us to number 4, please.
All right, episode 4, Behind the Lines, stardate 51149.5, directed by LeVar Burton, written by Renee Echeverria, aired October 18th of 97. Sisko creates a risky plan to disable a critical Dominion sensor array able to see 5 sectors out. While on Terok Nor, Kira, Jake, Rom, and Odo seek to undermine the Cardassian Dominion alliance.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah. Well, let's say that 3 of those 4 people are working towards that goal. By the end of the episode. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as the Memory Alpha mentions, matters get complicated when the female changeling arrives. And
she's Yoko. She is Yoko. She's Yoko to the Beatles. That is this foursome. So yeah, Odo is John Lennon, and the female changeling is Yoko.
Somehow that seems appropriate.
It does. And again, even that statement, I say it somewhat in jest because the Beatles were on their way to breaking up when Yoko came along. She was just the final nail in the coffin, if you're at all a Beatles historian, which I happen to be. But that is in pop culture, calling someone a Yoko means someone who, comes between friends. And that's basically what this was. So yeah, all right. Talk to me about it. How are you feeling about this one?
This one's an interesting one because we start to see like the fraying of the alliance between the Cardassians and the Dominion. They're starting to like freak out.
Yeah, that great cold open in the bar.
Oh, they're just they're fighting each other.
Yeah,
wow.
And it's because Rom and Kira set it up. By leaking this draft document that Damar was writing that's saying if they can't, this is where it comes back in. If they can't get more Ketracel White, what they have to do is poison the last ration so that all the Jem'Hadar die because otherwise they'll go mad and kill everyone. And I'm like, really? I mean, dude, it's not a bad plan, honestly, but you should have been carrying that pad around with you in your back pocket, not leaving it somewhere you found. Yeah. So that starts a fight and a bunch of people get killed. And then I love it how when the fight starts, Rom's watching it and you just see Kira do a homer into the bushes.
Yeah.
That was so great. She's like, dee, dee, dee. She invented it. She must have invented it. And then
I guess so. Yeah. Someone saw it and they're like, oh, we need to put that in there because she did it so masterfully.
That was good stuff. So, yeah. But then you're right. Yeah, the female changeling shows up and then she starts to kind of chip away at Odo's resolve by
so
it's very manipulative. If anyone has ever had a manipulative romantic partner, significant other, which I certainly have more than once, you know how that kind of attention or affection or love, if you will, can really twist your mind sideways. When someone's playing with your emotions, and Odo has them, and the female changeling, whether she, for whatever her reason is, she really horns in on the fact that unrequited love with Kira and gets him to talk about it and gets him to let his guard down. And he's like, I'm so vulnerable to her because, if she smiles at me, I'm so happy. And if we have a disagreement, I'm destroyed.
Yeah, she really pokes at his desire for intimacy and to be known.
Right.
She hits him she gets the 2 angles. So she gets him from you haven't experienced the link in its fullness, which is this really close, intimate knowledge of each other.
Very sexual in a lot of ways, yeah.
In a lot of ways, yeah. And then also the romantic aspect with Kira, which then she exploits later.
Oh my God! And then as we get into the next episode, she orchestrates Kira being executed and just being like, it doesn't matter. The point is that she's going to be dead and you'll be free. And he's just going to be like, well, okay. It's just.
And she's just horrible. I mean,
no, and she fits right in. It's amazing that she and Dukat couldn't get along because they are both such garbage people. Holy shit.
I think both of their egos are just too big to work together. And
you've got the toady, Wei-Un, just.
And Wei-Un is just doing his brown nosing all through the entire episode, which is funny yet cringe to watch.
Right. Extraordinarily. All right. We're moving into the 2-part finale of this 6-episode arc and of this episode. Mm-hmm. I'll read both of them and we can kind of talk about them as a joint, because really it's a little micro movie. We've got episode 5, which is Favor the Bold. Winrich Colby coming back to direct. This is Bear and Beimler. So you got the big shots. Learning of thousands of Dominion reinforcements thanks to Damar figuring out how to take down the minefield, potentially coming from the Gamma Quadrant in short order. Sisko initiates a plan to retake Deep Space Nine and secure the wormhole before the minefield is detonated, leading us into the Sacrifice of Angels. Alan Craker returning to direct. Bear and Beimler handling the writing. These were from October and November, respectively, of 97. And then I think we got a little break. Sisko commands the Defiant and 600 Federation ships against a 1,200 ship Dominion Cardassian armada to retake DS9. Damar has Kira, Jake, and Lita arrested.
Yep.
This episode is bittersweet, and I'm not even talking about the plot.
Right.
The visuals created in this episode of basically the starship combat that takes place in the second part.
It's amazing.
And basically the staging of it, which takes place at the end of Favor the Bold, is a big part of why this show is very difficult to remake in HD, because as I understand it, the physicality, because it was all pretty much done with practical models, the physicality of that would require a complete rebuilding from scratch of every one of those segments here and then elsewhere in the series. Do keep in mind, a lot of the visuals used here do get reused in other big dogfight sequences without the rest of the show. That being said, this was the most... I remember when I was taping this on VHS, pausing out the commercials, when I was in college, they were going from act 3 to 4, I think it was, and you saw all these ships gathered at 375, Starbase 375, and then they swept together and started to move out. I remember stopping the tape, backing it up, watching that, and then starting the tape again, because I just had to see it that badly.
When I watched it the first time, it was like, holy cow.
And they did all of that with models. I mean, because
there's some CGI in there.
In its infancy, and it has
to be very, very early, but there's a little bit of CGI in some of the distant ships, I think.
But they get so much done. There's a beautiful shot of the Defiant spinning in a circle.
And shooting. It's a really cool move.
Yeah, and then you see, and as he spins, you see a Galaxy class ship, and he spins back around. He's pointing at a Cardassian ship, shooting at it. Oh my God! I mean, and outside of that, the plot line of what's happening at the station is absolutely dynamic, because you see absolutely you see absolutely everything fall apart, with the way the female changeling, spectacularly played by Salamoni Jens, who was also the preserver in The Chase and TNG, which we talked about just a few weeks ago. The way that she's pulling this off. Of course, this is not her first appearance in the role, but it's her most significant to date. And then the absolutely heartbreaking end to this, not just, the fact that they make it to DS9 and the Prophets decide to get involved and they basically dissipate all of the Dominion reinforcements within the wormhole, and say, wormhole's closed. You're not coming through here.
Wormhole's not open for business, guys. Go home.
But with the Dominion evacuating the station, Zial confesses to her father that I'm part of the resistance. I'm helping my friends. And Ducat's like, I love you. She says, I love you. I love you. And Ducat takes a step towards her, and then a disruptor beam lances out and shoots her in the heart. And she keels over, and it's Damar. And he said, you heard what she said. She's a traitor. And this is the point. Literally, they could put the snapping of a branch in here of the time when Ducat's brain breaks for all time, because he just collapses and then Damar runs off without him. And when Sisko retakes the station, is incredible. They find Ducat crumpled in a corner. They pick him up. Ducat is holding Sisko's baseball, and he says, "Did he say I forgive you?" And he gives him the baseball. Like, he's gone. He has gone bye-bye. He is in his he is not in his happy place. He's just in another place.
He's in a mental pit.
Yeah, so suffering. That is, and again, this gets revisited in an episode a few episodes down the line, but I can't think, to put this all to a bow, and then obviously, Peter, I want to get your input on these last two, that I can think of a pack of episodes in all of Star Trek that could touch this with the 10-foot pole. This is absolutely Not spectacular. Really. There's nothing. It's an unparalleled achievement. It's like the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band of Star Trek, to extend another Beatles metaphor. It's a masterpiece. Almost everything that they did, I don't even know that we can do a best and a worst out of this, Peter. I don't think we can. I don't know that I can, because I feel like it's one story that really flows.
That's the thing where this season really started all of a lot of the archetypes of storytelling especially in Deep Space Nine,
right?
Because that's where we primarily saw it. We didn't really see it as much in Voyager.
Right. Voyager really embraced more of a traditional
more
planet of the week, and we're gonna fix this.
There was like some character progression that went through the show, but there wasn't these big arcs. The only time that we got back to that was like Enterprise, where we had like season 3, which was only it had a focus the entire time.
Whole split. Yeah. And by that time, this in the early 2000s, that was becoming more the norm. You had shows like 24 that they had a single story, or you had 2 stories split in half of a 24 episode season. But what are your thoughts about these last 2 before we wrap things up? I just don't really know where to go with saying this was better than another.
These episodes are absolutely insane. They're really, really cool. Like, you get some really interesting development of how different people deal with war.
Yeah.
Like, you have Nogs freaking out. Bashir and O'Brien are quoting, the Battle of the Light Brigade.
Right.
Into the Valley of Death, or the 500. Like, it's freaking Nog out, but they're remembering poetry and reflecting on battles of past and whatever, and kind of preparing themselves. And so there's just some really interesting moments with that. You have in the previous episode, you have the ceremony with the exhausted phaser array.
Oh, right. Yeah. With change. Yeah. They have a little routines.
They have this little ceremony thing where they pull out the phaser charge amplifier or whatever it is. And so there's all of that. And then you have back on the station, you have the Resistance that's really trying to do its thing. They get caught, and then hysterically it's Quark who gets them out.
Quark saves the day
with Zial. Zial is ultimately the one who pulls the trigger to open the cells, because he just freezes. But he comes up with
what
this,
did I do? Yeah,
he comes up with this plan to get them out. He grabs the phasers and shoots 2 Jem'Hadar soldiers.
Right.
And it's one of those moments where this is one of those times where you see, and I like when they do this, where Quark likes to show himself to be like a schmuck.
Yeah.
And he kind of is, but there is a heart of gold under there.
Yeah, but he kind of isn't. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. Like you said, the space scenes in this episode are they have no equal, really. There's some absolutely beautiful shots in some of the other shows or some of the movies where ILM, we have the fantastic cinematography and the motion picture where they're just showing off the Enterprise. We have some absolutely glorious shots of the Enterprise in First Contact and some other ones.
Yeah.
But even the Battle of Sector 001 doesn't hold a candle to this, because there's just so much insanity going on.
And that was all CGI, and it was brief, where this takes the span over 2 episodes. And so much of it is practical model work. And you're seeing the only thing I found somewhat limiting is that because it was so practical, you really only had a small variety of ships. So you got the Excelsiors, the Mirandas, the Galaxy class.
You had the Defiant, and then you had, I think you may have, I don't think they had there may have been an Akira in the background, and I think that's where the CG came in.
Yeah, because the problem with First Contact is that your Akiras, your Steam Runners, and some of the other designs in that were all CGI. And one of them, I don't remember which one, I think it was the Steam Runner, was lost to time. That file was on a drive and got lost, so it had at some point had to be rebuilt.
Yeah, it's been rebuilt since. We've seen it in Prodigy, I think it came back.
Which was animated, but still it was animated, but it was also 3D. So, I have to say, looking over these 6, I have, it's different when we have 6 different stories to talk about.
But this is like a whole 6 episode arc.
This will probably be, at least from my perspective, the first time where we kind of waive that, unless you have a strong feeling about one that really stands out, because Sacrifice of Angels it's such a gut punch right at the end that if you had to pick something that was the strongest, I would probably go with that. But it doesn't make me feel like any of the other segments are lacking to the point that I would say that they were weaker.
No, I mean, if you had to pick one, I might pick Rocks and Shoals, just because there's not as much going on the planet, but that's really it.
Right. Yeah, so, right. And to contrast it back to the stations when we get Kira and the Resistance and
but there's so much going on in the station. So it's just, you can't really just be like, this one's not as good, because it's telling all one story.
Right.
So this is basically like a mini series, mini movie, all just crammed together in like 6 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, we didn't have any comments this week, but again, if you're listening to our show, anytime we're having an episode, I try to share on the socials, on our Discord, on our various Facebook pages, or certainly to our email address, which is secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on what we're going to be talking about. And I always announce, in segment 2, what episodes we're talking about. And then the first segment will generally be new content, or we'll be getting back into talking about random episodes now, once we wrap up talking about Lower Decks. And then after we get through the Section 31 movie, we'll be going to random episodes, which I would love to reach out to our listeners to help us choose. So if you're curious about how that works, drop a line on the Discord, or hit me up. I'll do my socials first. You can find me over on Threads, on Instagram, or on Blue Sky as @the CEETHREE. And let me know if you're interested in doing that, or if you want to just comment on anything we've said or anything that we're going to be talking about. We would absolutely love to hear from you. I mentioned our Discord. It's a very fun place to have geek discussions. We've got a specific thread there for this show where you can just talk about Star Trek. We'd love to hear from you. So that's that. Peter, where do people find you out there?
You can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas. I'm not terribly active, but if you poke at me, I might say something. Start an argument about star dates. That'll get me riled up.
That's a tough one.
So you can also find me over on ELH's channels and Twitch. We're in between games, but there might be another one where I'm in at some point. And then you can also find me behind the scenes on Starship Excelsior, a fan audio production. It's great.
He's got the fingers and the many pies. Well, that is the show, folks. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.